Of our team at Meta, we will talk about an important aspect of this product, and it's an aspect that for the first time emerges in a computer industry for reasons that we'll try to make clear today. Why neuroscience, why visual perception? We'll try to make it clear, but we'll keep a conversation, so feel free to stop me, ask during the talk, so we'll clarify anything that is not clear, especially the fundamentals, because one of the take-home from today would be why perception, why neuroscience, okay? So just to give you an outline, I'll give you a quick intro about Meta. Who has heard of Meta before? Okay, that's a 20% maybe. Who has heard of augmented reality before? You can raise your hands. So that's not a 100%. That's very interesting because it sets the ground for definitions. Who has tried augmented reality? Just handful? Okay. Who has tried virtual reality? Okay. Almost 3 times as many. That's yeah, Pokemon doesn't count. This is what I tell myself. Is this augmented reality? Not for me. So we'll talk a quick intro of Meta, quick intro about perception and Meta, what we do there, and then how we apply this wealth of knowledge and of research we do to the design of an augmented reality product, okay? Which is the missing step, which is the step we need to add as we transition, both me and Mochian, I call her Momo, it's easier, and I probably pronounce it better. As we transition from academia and we want to apply our knowledge to a product, we need to find the right way to do it and the fast way to do it, okay? So about Meta. So this is our Meta model, but also one of our lead ID designers of Meta is the guy, is one of the 2 or 3 people behind the design of Meta 2, who's been having incredible reviews, especially for design and comfort by independent media. So it's a Meta is an augmented reality headset, which is a see-through, optical see-through augmented reality headset with gesture control, okay, or hand control. What does it mean? It means that, yes, it looks exactly like this. You see the eye of the person who is. But Martin, the model of this picture, he can see the real world, the people around him, and 3D images around him that float in space. He can go out with his hands and reach out and grab and stretch and poke buttons, can interact with his hands with these 3D images. This is augmented reality. That implies that your reality, your physical reality, is augmented with digital content, okay? The big difference with virtual reality is your presence in the real world, in the physical world, which is what I personally, I don't want to get into any competition, but I call this presence. There is a concept of presence in virtual reality that implies a physical absence in a way, and virtual reality is very cool, but for a complete set of different applications, if you wish. Okay, so the presence for augmented reality is presence in the real world, okay, plus, okay, it's your real world plus. What is the product like? Slightly more technically, very important is the optical engine. It's the optical and display solution that lets you see the digital content and the word. And this is a unicity of Meta. This is the fact that our optical engine affords a 90 degrees field of view. That means that We have a see-through display with objects that are almost as large as an object, as a virtual object that you can get in virtual reality. Virtual reality typically is 100 plus degrees. We're very, very close to that. Meta One, as well as any other robust competitors in the field, as probably, or makers. I don't consider other AR products competitors. We're actually going together towards the future of tech, but they have Meta One at 30 degrees field of view. HoloLens is about the same, 30 degrees field of view, 35 degrees. And there's some reports of other models like ODG getting in the 50 degrees field of view range. But 90 degree means that you get like a lot of, you can include, suppose you're designing cards, you can include a full scale car in front of you. That's a digital car, okay? Or you're buying a new car and your dealer misses the model you want to buy. It can show you a full scale model of the exact car you want to buy, okay? Resolution is 2.5K. I added this metric here. What's important in terms of resolution for virtual and augmented reality is the number of pixels that you can include in a degree of visual angle. And you want to know that 20 pixels per degree makes a pixel barely visible, almost indistinguishable, okay? So it's very close to the limits of human acuity. So it's a very high resolution. And again, you can find this in reports, in independent reports in the media. We have technology, beside the optical engine, we have technology, we have a depth sensor that supports the tracking of hands, and it's got computer vision algorithms to track hands around. And we have, importantly, and this is another important piece of tech to define augmented reality versus, for example, a simple head-up display. For example, Google Glass is SLAM. SLAM allows your virtual digital content to be locked in the real world, okay? So you can, I can put my 3D model on this chair, leave it there, turn my back and go back, it's still there, okay? And it knows that it's sitting on a surface, okay? And we have an evolving technology that supports that. For those of you who tried HoloLens, this is something that is very, very strong in HoloLens, okay? That's a very robust tracking. The virtual object is locked to the real world, okay? And that from the experiential point of view, it's a very important bit of tech. SLAM. Questions so far? Okay. Not all of you are inside this technology, and probably you have. And I had questions already before the talk about the use cases. What kind of use case does this technology support? I'm not giving a cell talk, but use cases are all over the place. No matter what your job is, you can find a use case. It can be education, it can be training, it can be design, it can be assembly, it can be healthcare of all sorts. I want to jump to the coolest ideas that we can implement now with augmented reality, which is collaborating on 3D models, two people working and learning together on a model. And this is something that Meta just showed at Sundance Film Festival as an installation about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And this is a little movie that shows what we did at Sundance, and probably opens your mind about how much impactful this technology can be.
Our brain is the most complex machine in the known universe. It all started here on Earth, a long time ago. An only light, we all much as a sharp-edged tool. is responsible for our most basic automatic functions. Touch the occipital lobes to move them into place. The occipital lobes process information related to vision. The parietal lobes deal with spatial awareness, touch, and body position. The frontal lobes, they are involved in the functions of thinking and decision making. Even now, within your brain, almost 26 billion neurons are firing in a perfect symphony of electrical signals. Without a doubt, sitting on your shoulders is the most sophisticated mechanism for neural clearance, the natural machine.
Wow.
This is good. Great. Awesome.
Okay. Two people sitting in front of each other, learning about the brain, touching the brain together, assembling pieces of the brain with their own point of view on the digital content. Okay, that's an installation. That's a proof of concept, but the potential of this is huge. I mean, I don't have to tell you. I'm sure you have already way more ideas than I ever had in 3 years working at Meta. It opens huge possibilities, and this is what Meta does. What you saw here, there's no computer graphics. It's being shot through the glasses, so it's real content. It's not fake. But anyway, I don't know if all of you can be doing that, but there will be a demo of Meta to set up after the talk. Okay. You have questions so far, because it's the end of the first mini block of our talk. All right, so let's talk about perception. Okay, why we study the brain, why we study visual neuroscience, why we study perception. I should cite myself, but this is my talk. I think I'm allowed. In a TEDx talk that I gave in last December in LA, one key sentence is, with augmented reality, we're moving computer from our desks and our palms right into our eyes, our senses, and our brain. Okay, so we cannot just get rid of a badly designed app that's messing up with our eyes by putting it in the pocket, because we're gonna wear it. Okay, our relationship with the computer is gonna be physically intimate. So we're gonna have to know how our body and our brain wants to interact with a computer. Okay, I'm sorry. The second is a fact of science, is that human beings are visual animals. Okay, we got 5-6 senses, you count them, but visually, our cortex, which is what makes us humans, the development of the cortex of our brain. Conservative estimates say that 30 to 40% of our cortex does perform visual operations of some form. Just visual filtering, or object processing, or vision to action, visual motor processing, multisensory processing. No matter what they do a lot of stuff, but 40% of our cortical neurons will be impacted by the visual content in the environment. Okay, so as we build the computer that lives in our eyes, we need to know how our brain accepts that information, or rejects it, or blends it with the real world. Okay. Then let's go one level deep, and I don't want to get you crazy. How many of you guys have like fundamentals or experts of perception? Nice. Fundamentals of even cognitive science, like Psych 101 type of thing. So on average, I'm talking to an audience of people who don't know much, but by perception is our act of getting input from the environment through our senses. We transduce energy with our senses. Our brain does a lot of crunching and processing and produce some form of output. Okay, I tend to think that perception is not for staring at the Mona Lisa, which personally is not my favorite painting, but it's Italian like me. It's more for reacting and interacting with the world, so and we interact with computers, okay? So perception is an active process, and it's one of the most fundamental processes to build our identities. This is what we mean by perception, is the overall act, is not just the input part, okay? Although we need to care about the input part. And as we just unfold from a functional point of view, the visual brain, we have to think about two main compartments. Yeah, you can pay attention to that, but even to me, it's here. We have the eye, it's the back of the brain, called occipital cortex. There's a lot of cool computation there, especially for the signal processing geeks. I'm not going into that details, but from there, information departs in two main pathways, okay, with a lot of crosstalks, but it's too much. One is called the ventral pathway. The ventral pathway gets us to stare at the Mona Lisa and to recognize the face of our friends, to recognize objects, very important functions, right? And there are bits of little regions of this dorsal pathway that goes around, like the wraps around the temples of our brain, that do that kind of processing, very important. And I would argue that recognition, like icons, symbols, is a lot of our computers before augmented and virtual reality, before 3D computing. Like the Windows graphical user interface is based a lot on this recognition pathway of the brain. But we also have the dorsal pathway. The dorsal pathway is what translates visual and sensory information into body, actions, reaction. It gives us the sense of space. It tells us how things are related in space, and what it gets us to behave actively in the world. And again, I'm arguing that with this new form of 3D computing, we're gonna stimulate a lot the dorsal pathway. What I do here, I basically take the top conference in the world, the Vision Science Society conference, like general sessions. I shared one of those conferences, and I had to set up the sessions. And these labels here may well be sessions in a Vision Science conference. Meaning that, okay, the information starts here. At this stage, people just perceive that. It's just sensing, basic reception of input, and I call it low level, and there's a lot of visual features. All these labels here are relevant for an AR product, and we need to know how the brain processes that. Things like color, motion, attention, and the contrast, brightness. This is stuff that's performed at low level. Then as we go to the ventral stream that processes the what, we get mid-level things like texture, contours, figure ground segregation. How do we segregate a real object from a virtual object? Those are things that we need to know, and we need to adapt to understand how to design for augmented reality. Then we go to high level, and we need to know how objects are processed. What is the identity for the brain of a virtual object in 3D, of a nice 3D model? Is this for your brain like a real physical object, or is it like an image? We know that the brain reacts differently to the same input if it's a flat image in 2D or if it's a graspable 3D object, even though the retina has the same input. Okay, so the brain does a lot to recognize that. We need to know that to set up not only the visual interface, but also to figure out how to interact with our hands. On the vision and interaction part, there's even more stuff to know, which is, for example, how depth is processed. We do a 3D computer, we need to know a lot about that. We need to know how different senses are integrated. We need to know how the brain sets visual coordinates in the brain to set up our interface, and maybe in some cases lock it to the glasses, in some other cases being independent on the glasses, according to the task. And there's a lot of stuff in between. I don't want to overwhelm you. You can ask questions later. There's also social brain. You've seen the communication part. So what do we do if we're collaborating with a remote collaborator? Do we want to go like Skype and show like a anchorman or news? Or do we want to show the hand? If we show the hand, chances are that we trigger the mirror neuron system, which is a system of neurons that engage. It's very cool stuff, that engage when we perform an action on an object, and it should be a meaningful action, or when we see the same meaningful action performed by some other person in front of us. So they react equally to seeing and doing, okay? And maybe if we're collaborating or if we're teaching, if I'm a surgeon, a remote surgeon, and I'm teaching my surgeon in the south of Italy who's doing, for the first time, a very delicate piece of surgery, I want to show the hand of the model that I'm trying to convey to my novice surgeon that I'm teaching to, and maybe I'm at Stanford, and we can do that, okay? Probably we do it better if we show the hand, and we will learn that even from neuroscience. Two quick examples, okay, that we are deeply considering a meta. We're doing a lot of stuff in this real-man meta. Some of this we can share, but we don't have time. Some of this we cannot share at all. Some of this we're sharing today. Stereo vision. Okay, stereo vision, we can make easy assumption on stereo vision. Yes, once you achieve disparity, stereo vision is based on binocular disparity. The left and the right eye, they see two different versions. This is an example of what it should be like for the left and right eye if you're fixating your finger at a particular distance. But then if you're a technologist and you don't know about it and this happened, you're just saying, okay, I fix for that and I generate that disparity modulation and I will have level of depth for everyone. Okay, let's see how many factors impact on stereo acuity. Stereo acuity, which is the ability to distinguish the relative depth of two objects, a very crucial element of human performance in AR, is impacted by the contrast of the image, is impacted by the spatial frequency, more easily the size of your elements, is impacted by interocular differences. We all have a dominant eye, or we have an eye that is weaker from a refractive standpoint, and so forth. And the relative dose of this inequality between our left and right eye changes in all of us, okay? Only a few lucky people have very even functioning of the two eyes. Oops, sorry. The stimulus duration is a big factor to generate better acuity, and actually the integration time to get a better relative depth is up to 3 seconds. It's a long time, okay, to achieve. So the stereo information accumulates over a long time in some specific conditions, yeah.
So you're saying that when I look at you, it takes about 3 seconds for me to develop.
It depends on the task. This is, in some case, when you get a very fine, like relative depth judgment to make, it may take up to 3 seconds to integrate that information. Now that I'm making the difference between two guys, that's much easier. And we're talking about stereo only. We're not talking about, now he's occluding you. I'm sorry, I'm using you for this example. He's occluding you, so I don't even need two eyes. Stereo is the information about depth that you get from the two eyes combined. So it's only one of the cues to depth. The real world offers a lot of more stuff to make this judgment, but if we isolate everything and we're left with stereo, then it may take that long. But you need to isolate stereo. It's not difficult to do when you have AR glasses, and it's a very, very rich part of the depth experience in general. So otherwise, you know, if monocular cues were similarly rich, there wouldn't be any need of creating crazy things like multifocal or light field displays like Magic Leap rumors say, right? But apparently it does, because you need to have a whole like monocular, binocular set of experience to have the richest.
Thank you.
Accommodation vergence conflict, which is a big deal. Who's aware of who knows about it's a big bat now in the industry, and it's what generated the 1.4 billion investment in Magic Leap. Apparently they have in hand a solution for accommodation vergence. What is accommodation vergence? You might want to know, because your chances are that if you're reading about optical technologies for AR and VR, this is a bad concept now, and it's important. So our eyes, when you change the distance of the object we're fixating, two main processes occur. One is that each eye changes the curvature of the lens of the eye to refocus based on the distance. This is the accommodation process. It's a refocusing process. But also at the same time, binocularly, our eyes will change the angle to reflect the distance, right? As you're getting closer and closer, you will verge or converge more and more, okay? 3D technologies like the 3D movies, but also your 3D TVs, not a big business. They didn't take off, but virtual reality and the current augmented reality technologies, they only have one focal plane. That means that your focus is in only one slice, if you want, of the visual world that's set up by the specs of your tech. In virtual reality, like the Oculus Rift is set at about 1.5 meters, 2 meters, so you focus to infinite virtually. But then they change the disparity. So your vergence will move away from this focal plane. This doesn't happen in natural life. In natural life, if I was younger, I could look at different people and my eyes changes shape and my vergence changes. Now, because I'm way beyond my 45, which is when most of the people get their lenses stuck in a focal plane, I don't accommodate anymore. I only verge, right? This is people with reading glasses. Some of you guys are smiling about it. I guess we're close in age range. But this is a problem we get, right? We don't accommodate more. We don't have that problem, and we keep verging on the world. Point is, the mismatch that this technology creates between accommodation and vergence is generating eye fatigue, eye stress. In some cases, it's been associated with nausea and other symptoms. So it's a discomfort for the user. So this is why it's so important for nailing this technology. But it's not the only problem, because I'm going to show you that when we talk, because of these many factors and the individual differences reflected by each one of these that are relatively independent of one another, when there's been a study performed at Cambridge in UK about the distribution of stereo acuity in a large sample population, which is about, this is about 4,000 people, I think, but you can integrate this histogram. It's thousands of people. And if you see, so the more you go away, the worse these people are in making relative depth assessment. And the good acuity is, let's say, within this range. Then if you go that, you almost define as a stereo blind person, a person who cannot see stereo vision, right? More in particular, 10% fail cross disparity test, which is the disparity for one plane of the image relative to where it's a technical thing, but about 20% of the people failed in disparity test, in stereo tests, and more than 30% are not ideal performance in stereo acuity. That is a huge amount of the population, okay? What are the dangers of these individual differences? Which again, at 30%, and they're generated a multi-factor, is that because this is a new product and we don't know yet what the business destiny will be of this product, what you want as as an AR company, you want to have this kind of customer reviews, but you risk of going like that, going with a bimodal distribution where you get like 50% of 5 stars, but we get a lot of 1 stars, which may kill the product in a way. So we need to know what determines that, and now you can generate fixes for that, or you can work around that to accommodate 95% of the population, not 70%, because if the destiny of this technology is mass adoption, and now more and more people think that this technology will cannibalize even on our phone, not in a long time, then we want to find a solution for accommodating even though 30% of non-ideal people with stereo vision. Another quick study, and I think I'm going to have to go fast, is our knowledge of perception of vision science and how it impacts on the design of interface. We did a study in collaboration with Accenture Technology Lab in which we were studying AR instruction. So if you're doing an assembly task, which can be your IKEA piece, or you can do something in your industry, but you can also be doing Lego assembly, and some of them are very challenging. How can we design AR instruction in a brain-compatible way to maximize the performance in a procedural task? And a procedural task is an assembly task. Okay, we know that. We know that motion and depth are connected in the brain. We know it from structure, from motion. So if we see these dots like that, this is just dots in a rectangular shape. But if we get them to move with a specific pattern, then we immediately see a cylinder. So this is a collaboration between the what and the motion parts between the dorsal and the ventral stream that we know in the brain it's integrated at the level of the middle temporal area. You don't care, just telling you that there's an area in the brain that integrates motion and depth information. And this is my own brain, by the way, in a publication. When I was a PhD student, I need to be a lab rat in an MRI scan for my professor. So we compare one version that is not ideal for the brain, still through AR, and this is instruction given like this. We call it static AR. We tell this is what you need to do for the next step. Or we combine motion and depth, and we provide a volumetric representation of the part that the people is working on, and we measure performance on the actual assembly task with real Lego in the dynamic condition in which we show the parts, but before we attach the parts, we generate a motion pattern that creates a richer representation of the object that people is operating at. And I'm going fast here. This is a measure of performance, and what I want to say is that the dynamic part was much better, statistically much better than both the static and the paper version for the instruction, meaning that overall the task was much faster with augmented reality dynamic instructions. And interestingly, the static augmented reality only doesn't necessarily help you because it was lower than the paper version. So just by using deeply what the brain wants to use in terms of richness of information, combining motion and depth, we created a better performance. With that only, that didn't work for our task and for our paper. Okay, there was a paper at ISMA, it's been published for ISMA, and ISMA is the IEEE conference for augmented reality. And we knew from the same study that people say that AR instructions are way more effective than paper instruction in terms of subjective assessment. Like about 85% of the people definitely prefer augmented reality instructions. Not only they perform better, but they like it more. And this experiential plus performance part is a very rich part, and it came from combining design with science. But for the way we combine design and science, I'll pass the mic to Moshan, and we'll take questions now or later, but Moshan will be more interesting than I've been, I'm sure.
Thank you. It seems the air conditioning is off, so can people hear me from the back? So before I start talking, I just want to point out something interesting. In this slide, I just noticed that the subject name is here as Stefano Baldassi, which is your initial. And it's usually when you report a patient's data that you put the initial of subject.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
No, that's a joke. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little about what we do at Meta. Why do we care about neuroscience? Why do we care about studying the brain? And how does that inform designers? So how many of you are designers in this? No, one, two. How many of you have worked in the AR industry? A few of you. Okay, cool. I guess we'll have an activity in the end where you should pretend that you're a designer and design for augmented reality apps. But before that, I just want to talk about how we think about designing in augmented reality in Meta. So why do we care about the brain? Because it's the machine in our mind that supports interaction. We interact with objects, with other people, with ourselves, with the entire world, with digital information also. So the user interface is this tool that an augmented reality device can give us to interact with the digital information. And there's a bridge between understanding how the brain works and designing the best interface for people to use it easily. So what we call this is spatial interface design because we are no longer designing in 2D space. We have all the 3D volumetric space around us that is given by the augmented reality devices, and we want to make full use of this space. And by creating this spatial interface design guidelines, we inject some of our knowledge about neuroscience into design principles. The Bayesian brain is an overarching principle that we use throughout all of the principles. So what does it mean? So this is a picture that's created by Stefano. You took the picture and you put some Photoshop. Oh, okay, sorry about that. So the question is, how many, which car is the biggest in this picture? How many of you do you think that this car is the biggest? How many of you think this car is the biggest? No one. Okay, so how many of you think they are the same size?
Some of you are guessing that.
All right, so the actual size of the image are the same across the three cars. If I use my hand as a ruler, you can say that they are exactly the same size. However, we believe that this car is bigger. Why is that? It's because we have a prior knowledge of perspective, which means that we see that this street is going that way, and because this curves are curving in. So the Bayesian statistics tells us that further objects are smaller. And we get the same retinal size of these two cars. And if we see the further objects to be the same size, we infer that they must be bigger because to have the same retinal size, right? So this is a very simple example about how our brain uses prior. So we don't just follow the exact physical property of the visual stimuli. We infer a lot from them based on our prior knowledge. So this is another example of how we should use the vision principles to help us design. For example, here are two kinds of paintbrush. On the left is a realistic looking paintbrush that has a body of the pen and a tape that seems to have something coming out of it, and another paintbrush which is a symbol. So which one is better? Our brain will like the first one better because it agrees with our priors. We have a prior that a paintbrush will look like this. For this one, we might need to learn about what it is. We have to build new associations between what this symbol is and and its function. So there's an extra step for our brain to learn to use this kind of icons. So I'm going to talk about 6 spatial interface principles. And after this, I will describe 4 different scenarios where a designer tries to, there's a interface, like a scenario where there are a lot of interaction going on, and I'd like you guys to come up with some ideas about whether the scenario agree with these principles or not. So the first principle is think spatial. Place tools and contents in space. What does it mean? So in each slide I will have 2 images. The image on the left is what we should do, and the image on the right is what we shouldn't do. The image on the right, you can see that it's a flat layout of contents and tools. You have Photoshop, and you have a tool box that's right on top of it. You have all these things laying out in 2D space. So for a designer, especially when you want to import already existing 2D design into augmented reality, it's very tempting to just add stereo information into whatever you already have. You can just like Stefano said, we have a stereo vision, and augmented reality lets you take advantage of that by presenting different information to the 2 eyes, so you can see the stuff popping out in front of you. So it's kind of cool to just put stereo information into the 2D interface. However, that's kind of defeats the purpose of augmented reality because it doesn't really use the space all around you. Instead, if we can take advantage of the depth in front of the user and use all the 360-degree space around them, then we can place more stuff and also engage a different part of the brain. So Stefano talked about the difference between ventral pathway and the dorsal pathway. Ventral pathway process what aspect of the object. Who are you? When I look at your face, I recognize your identity. And this kind of interface engage a lot about what those objects are. However, our dorsal pathway process the spatial relationship between objects. And this kind of interface actually engage more the dorsal pathway and let us truly interact with the objects. So the second principle is called minimize abstraction. Design tools and volume and affordances. So how many of you have heard the word affordance? So, right. Affordance means that the property of that object that invites me to interact with it. So when I look at a microphone, it has this handle that invites me to grab it. However, I will interact with another object differently. If here is a chair, I would use my arm instead of using just my hand to grab it. So this properties of the shape of the objects tells me how to interact with it. And when we design, we want to utilize this kind of function of the objects. So this kind of paintbrush will tell me exactly how to grab it and start painting. I don't need a tutorial to teach me how to click on a button and choose the right tool, which is exactly what this kind of interface is doing. From this kind of menu and icon, I have no idea which button should I use to draw and which button should I use to erase. So the next one is called You're the OS. Organize holographic files and tools in the user's environment. I'm pretty sure that we are all frustrated by this kind of file system. No matter it's Microsoft Windows or Mac, they're all the same. This kind of file system doesn't really help me in understanding the structure of the information. However, if we use another kind of mental ability, which is called spatial memory, it can really help us organizing things and remembering where they are. So we have a mental capacity called spatial memory. It tells us where things are related to our space. For example, I don't need to look back into the back of me to know that there is a table with a few chairs and a few water bottles on it, because I knew it and I have this spatial memory that already registered those objects. And similarly, if we have digital furnitures that are arranged in our space, and if they don't just move around all the time, then I can use them as my mental real estate to help me remember things. It's also, it might seem to be an idea than reality, but I think this is a good way to think about it. Touch to see. As Stefano said, a lot of the augmented reality glasses have the sensor to capture the movement of our hands. So in this headset, we can actually use our hands to interact with the virtual objects. And this gives us great benefit of understanding the objects more deeply, because a lot of things are happening in our brain when we use our hands. The first is that we have a peripersonal space, which means the space around us. And within this space, we have enhanced visual processing ability. An object that's right in front of me, I have a better understanding of it compared to an object that's far away. We actually just talked to a researcher in University of Nevada at Reno who did really interesting research. So she asked people to remember 100 different items, like a cup, an apple, and a plant. So she showed 100 pictures to of objects to these participants, and she asked them to remember as many items as they can. And after 10 minutes of doing other random things, she asked them to recall how many items that you have seen just now. And people usually can recall like 70–80% depending on the items, but she found this interesting phenomenon that items that are shown within the peripersonal space, people remember more. And it also have a higher resistance to delay. If you ask them to recall in 30 minutes, they still remember more than if they are presented outside of the peripersonal space. So this kind of research tells us that we should really use the space around us instead of throwing them all over the place, and really let people interact with it. Another aspect in neuroscience is about collaboration, right? So when we see other people interact with an object, our mirror neuron starts to fire and mimic other people's actions. So if in a collaboration environment where we can see each other's hands, it really helps both people to learn how to manipulate the object. So do not disturb. Protect the user's workflow from disruption. There are two kinds of attention: goal-driven attention and stimulus-driven attention. From the name, you probably can guess what they mean. Goal-driven attention is when we have a sustained amount of creative work. We want to really focus on the flow. And stimulus-driven attention is when like pop-ups and notifications grab our attention from what we're doing right now. And in augmented reality, so in our what we have now, our computer, our cell phone, these companies like to try to make us engage with these devices all the time, so there are notifications everywhere. But when we want to design for spatial interface, we want to, this is a more urging topic because one day we can wear these devices and walk around. And it's more dangerous than just carrying a phone because these pop-ups can disrupt us all the time. We can be driving and there is a notification coming and there could be an accident. So when we think about this, the future, we want to create an interface where we put notifications in a box that's probably outside of our field of view, and we can check the notification when we want to. We can have 1 hour a day to check our emails instead of clicking on the inbox menu all the time. The holographic campfire don't obscure hands and faces with the UI. This is a very interesting topic because collaboration is a very emerging, interesting area in augmented reality. Look at these two people. They are both focusing on a virtual object, but they can't really see each other's eyes. This is not a very efficient communication because our brain has evolved to communicate face to face. When we see, we have this engaged brain area that processes other people's expressions and eye gaze. We're extremely sensitive to other people's gaze and expression. If, say, in my periphery of vision, if Stefano makes a very bored expression, I probably can notice that, which you're not doing. And on the left, we can see that by thinking a little more about the placing of the interface, we can just easily place the interface a little bit downwards and free up this space where the two users interact with each other. So I've finished all the 6 principles, and I think I'm gonna split up you into 20 groups. I want to make this a little more interactive instead of you listening to a lecture. So I want to present a bunch of user scenarios, and I will have a printout that have the 6 principles written on the handout, and you can refer to those. But I want you to really think about how to implement those principles into a scenario like this. Maybe so we have almost 60 people here. Maybe you can, like each row of you can start discussing about these scenarios. So the first scenario is an industrial designer sits in front of her desk. She opens her latest work, a